All right. I will spread the news. Hey, everybody. We're going to be starting here in a minute. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to get signed in. What a gorgeous day. I hope some of you are sitting on your patio to join the Zoom call. I wish I was sitting on my patio to join the Zoom call.
Hey, Carol.
Hey, Carol. Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
We had a lot of, I'm sorry?
It's nice of you to do this for us.
Oh, well, you know, a lot of people still aren't comfortable getting out and getting into stores, which I certainly understand. And this is just a great way to, you know, that you probably remember, since you're a customer from way back at the very beginning, we tried to do workshops, and I would rent a room at the library, and we would kind of have these workshops on creating habitat and attracting bluebirds. And so now with the pandemic, we're all learning how to do these Zoom calls. And so it's a great way to reach out and touch customers and explain what we need for the different birds in our backyard. So it's been they've really been fun to do. It seems like I always have some technical issues, and if I have technical issues this time, somebody call the store, and if I disappear. So speaking of which, I'm gonna go turn the music off. Yeah, see, I'll just hang in there. I'll be right back.
Call from 25282.
All right, people are still signing in. So it's not quite 2:30 yet, so we'll give everybody a chance to get in here. Uh-oh. I can't talk. I'm doing a presentation. Girls on the Greenway, this is Jan. Okay. And now she's on a presentation online. So she can't talk for probably an hour.
Hello, Mom, are you on here?
I am.
Okay, I don't, oh, there you are. Okay. Do you see me?
I do, sweetheart.
Okay,
Everybody sees you.
I don't see everybody.
Over to the side of your screen, there should be kind of a gallery view button that you can click and it'll show you everybody. Or at least show
Some
you.
of them just have their name up. They're not on audio yet.
Okay. Yeah, we're still letting everybody get signed in here. Got a couple of chat. Yes, so somebody's already asking about a recording. And yes, it will be, a recording will be available after this. If I've done it right, it will be. So
I
people
still only see one person.
all right. Well, as long as you can see your screen, because during this presentation, I'm going to go to sharing screen, so you won't see anything except for my screen.
Okay.
So even though I know you want to see your mom, you'll still be Hummingbird. So
Okay.
and then a couple of times I'll come out of the presentation just to make a point on the different Hummingbird feeders, the ones that I like, the ones that I don't like. So we still have people coming in. It's getting close to, it's just a little after 2:30. It's 2:31. So there's Ella says hi, everybody. And we'll give, she's evidently a monster's come through the front door. So, we've never been, all the time we've had Ella, we've never been attacked by bears. So she's done a great job. All right. So just a couple of housekeeping points. Anytime you've got to run this, if this thing goes longer than you are allowed, that your time allows, just jump off. My feelings will not be hurt. There's a chat feature. If you could either raise your hand if you want to ask the question directly, or if you just wanted, the best way to do it is just to type your question or your comment into the chat feature. Everybody will be able to see those, and I'll also go through, and if you put a question in there, I will answer the question, all of them in the chat feature. So so I appreciate everybody joining us today. As you know, my name is Carol Buie-Jackson. I am with the North Carolina Wildlife Federation and the National Wildlife Federation. I'm on their boards, and I also have the two stores, which most of you are customers of the store. So I really appreciate you joining us today. We started doing these Zoom calls. We did some last year in the heat of the pandemic, and I can't believe we're on our 1-year anniversary since that whole trauma and drama started. And so this year, we're still using some of the tools we learned on how to communicate with you guys during a pandemic using the Zoom. And it just makes it a lot easier for you and for me to kind of address a large group of people based on your interests. And we did a bluebird workshop on how to track bluebirds. We did that back in February. We actually started in January, and then February we did a bird feeding workshop, bird feeding 101, to talk about the different feeders and how to attract the greatest variety of birds to your backyard. And I'm doing another one of those, I believe, next week on the 18th. So if you want to join that one, if you didn't get to see the first one, and then we're also doing another hummingbird workshop on the 25th. So if you get something out of this and you want to refer a friend to join us next time, please feel free to do so. And they don't have to be in Charlotte. They can be anywhere. We've got people joining us from a lot of different places. So, but do know that my expertise lies in the birds on the East Coast. I would not be able to answer questions about the birds in California or Colorado. So anyway, so we're glad that you joined us. We'll also be doing a workshop on water and providing water for birds and other wildlife, but that will probably be sometime in April. Also in April, while I've got you on the phone, or I've got you on this presentation, we are going to be we're going to be doing our milkweed sale in April as well. So it's going to be end of April. The milkweed, which is the host plant for the monarch butterfly, and we do it as a fundraiser for the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. We're also partnering up with Trees Charlotte again this year, and we will have sapling trees available for free that we'll be giving out. And then we'll also have a couple of other flowers like the black-eyed Susan and purple coneflower that feed the adult version of the monarch butterfly, as well as the other butterflies. So so that's coming up in April. So that's just a few announcements. Again, if you've got any questions, put it into the chat feature of Zoom, and I'll answer them as we go along. So today we're going to be talking about hummingbirds. You know, there's everybody, we kind of classify the three favorite birds of our customers as cardinals, bluebirds, and hummingbirds. Everybody loves hummingbirds. And they're just so special, you know, they're special creatures. They just, the way that they're so small and they're so fierce, they're just a joy to have around. So we're going to be talking about the best way to attract hummingbirds, best way to feed them, keep them safe, and some of the threats that you might not be able to do anything about, and also threats that you can do something about. So again, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. We're gonna go through a presentation, and then I'm gonna stop at different parts of the presentation and come out and kind of talk a little bit more in detail about what we're addressing. And if you have any questions, if I disappear, call the store. Let somebody write this phone number down. It's 704-541-1180. That's, I'm at Birdhouse today. So call the store and tell Jan, oh, we can't see her anymore. Usually if that happens, it's just a brief little thing, and then I will come back on. So, all right, so I'll share my screen. And if everybody could mute themselves, that would also help just for everybody's. All right, so screen broadcast, start broadcast. All right. I'm sharing my screen. Let me pull up my presentation. I was showing some videos earlier today to some kids here in the store that wanted to learn how to do the mealworm. So that's why you see the mealworm presentation. So, all right. All right, I'm going to have to admit some people are coming in late. So I'm going to go back and forth. I'm sharing my screen. Let's see, how do I get back over to my screen? Uh-oh. All right. Okay, so the four main practices of creating wildlife habitat, and this is not just for hummingbirds, this is everybody. And I feel like it's to do this responsibly, I have to tell you, you know, go back to my North Carolina Wildlife Federation and National Wildlife Federation roots and tell you the best way to attract animals, critters, birds to your backyard. And that's creating a wildlife habitat using food, water, shelter, and a place to raise young. And the best way to do that is to use native plants. And I'm going to talk a lot about the plants that attract hummingbirds today, but let me tell you why native plants are so important. Native plants harness the sun, the energy from the sun, right? That's where we get our energy from on this planet, from the sun. They harness the energy from the sun and they make it available to the rest of the food web with through their leaves and their limbs and petals and nectar. And I didn't fully understand, no, this is not hummingbirds, but watch this video. I didn't understand how important it was. Uh-oh. Okay, wait a minute. All right, I understand that I disappeared, but now I'm back, right?
Correct.
Everybody see me? Nod your heads. Okay, good. All right, so sorry about that. I told you there'd be at least one glitch, and let's hope that is the one. All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again. Share content, share my screen, start broadcast. I'm going to pick up where I left off on this video. All right. So I did this video of birds, and again, this is not hummingbirds, but I did this video, birds feeding the young in various nests around my backyard. And one thing I noticed was that they weren't, I had a lot of feeders in my yard and I had a lot of berry producing shrubs, but the only thing they were feeding those baby birds was insects. And that's because insects are just pure protein, and hummingbirds included. I don't have any footage of the hummingbirds feeding their babies. I've never found a nest in the wild, an active nest in the wild. I found one after the fact, but there's a chickadee with a caterpillar. It's estimated that it takes 9,000 caterpillars to raise one brood of chickadees. So if you can imagine, if that's chickadees, how many caterpillars would it take to raise bluebird babies? But it would also take, even if you cut it in half, that's also 4,000 caterpillars that it would take to raise a family of hummingbirds. So by planting native plants in your yard, you're supporting the insects in your yard. The insects, the moth caterpillars, the butterfly caterpillars, all of that protein in your yard is going to eat those native plants. And then the birds are going to be able to feed that protein to your baby birds, because the baby birds have got to have protein, or in order to build up their muscle, in order to build muscle. Even cardinals. See, this is a cardinal nest in the yard. Even cardinals are feeding mealworms and other caterpillars to their babies in order for them to be able to build those muscles up. And there's that chickadee again. There's a little house wren going in and out. Oh, that's a chickadee. Sorry. Here's the house wren. There's the house wren. Busy little thing. Bringing all sorts of spiders and crickets and katydids and grasshoppers, everything, worms, caterpillars, everything goes in those little mouths, because they've got to have that protein. So the best thing you could do for all birds, including hummingbirds, is to plant native plants in your yard. And here's a picture. This is not my picture, but here's a picture of a hummingbird with an insect. Even though we see them primarily at our feeders, drinking the nectar, their primary diet, especially for the babies, is protein in the form of insects. And you can assist them in that if you put fruit out, and we recommend putting fruit out for butterflies anyway, like an old banana or old apples, watermelon rinds. Those are really good, because that the butterflies will come and take that nectar, but also it attracts some fruit flies. And when the fruit flies come in, the hummingbirds will come in to eat the fruit flies. So that's kind of a fun way, kind of a two-stage way of feeding hummingbirds, by getting those insects to come in. A couple of books that I really recommend, and again, this is not just for hummingbirds, but this is bringing birds and other wildlife to your yard. Doug Tallamy has written 2 books, one called Bringing Nature Home. The other one is called Nature's Best Hope. And this one's a new book, The Nature's Best Hope. And we actually sell signed copies. He signed a bunch of copies for me. And I sell them as a fundraiser for one of the chapters for the Wildlife Federation. So you can come in and buy that book, or you can get it on Amazon. And another great book is from Dave Mizejewski. And again, this is a Wildlife Federation book on attracting birds and butterflies and other backyard wildlife. And he does a great job of, I don't want to say done it down, but doing it for, you don't have to be an expert gardener. You don't have to be an expert birder. He just gives you really practical advice and some recommendations on how you can create this wildlife habitat in your own backyard. But today we're going to talk about hummingbirds. And when you talk about hummingbirds in North Carolina, you're talking about the ruby-throated hummingbird. They are, that species is the only species that breeds here in the Carolinas. There are other birds, hummingbird species that come in the winter time. Either they've gotten blown off their migration, or they've just gotten confused, or just because of our milder weather here now. But see, even though that long neck bird, even that is a ruby-throated hummingbird. The male is the only one that has the bright ruby throat. And the females and the immatures have the green backs and then the white fronts. And a lot of times with the with the immature males, by the time they leave at the end of the summer, you can start to see them get some of their pin feathers. You can see a little red splotches under their chin. But this is the ruby-throated. This is a female here, ruby-throated hummingbird. And I want to show you that again for a couple of reasons. So let's look at it. Number one, that's my favorite type of feeder. And I'm going to talk more about that feeder. Also, you'll see the ant trap that's hanging from. And as it goes forward here, you'll see the ant trap. And the ant trap's really not a trap at all. It's a ant moat. It keeps the ants off of the hummingbird feeder. And there's a different type of feeder. We'll talk about that. But notice that it's hanging from a hook on my kitchen window. I'm going to talk more about placement of hummingbird feeders. Oh, there's the ant trap. Also, I want you to watch this behavior. These are two immatures, and they are fighting over the feeder. And in late summer, all of y'all are, I know you're familiar with this type of behavior. People say, well, hummingbirds are so mean. And I say, no, they're not mean. They are, think of them like puppies. You know, they're immature. They are acting out the instincts. They need to learn how to establish a territory. And they also need to learn how to, they need to not learn how to, but yeah, I guess maneuver and fly. And they've got to build up that muscle, because in late summer, it's when they are starting to, getting ready for their migration. So they need that muscle and they need to be in shape to make that migration. So that's what that behavior is all about. Although you will notice when the males come to your territory, they are usually the first ones to set up their territory. The males arrive first, and then they can really guard the feeders. I'm going to take this off a screen share for a second. They will sit up close and usually about 6 feet away and a little bit higher than your feeders, and they will guard that feeder. Because once the males get here, their primary focus is to set up their territory, right? So he with the biggest territory wins the female. The female is going to come in a week or two after the male. So he has to already have his territory established by the time she gets here. So when she comes, she's ready for mating and she is ready to raise her family. He has little to do with that whole process, unfortunately. But when she gets here, they mate. She will build a nest. And she will, usually the nest is always on top of a branch or maybe in the crotch of small branches. She builds a nest there. She uses moss and lichen and spider webs, and I will talk more about that. So I've seen people selling hummingbird houses. Don't waste your money unless you just think it's cute, but you need to understand that they are not going to use any type of house. They are not cavity nesters. You know, there's birds that are open nesters that build their nests in a bush or a tree. And then they are birds that go into a cavity. And usually there's no crossover of the two. So hummingbirds are open nesters. She will lay 2 eggs, and they're little tiny, like about the size of a jelly bean, 2 eggs. And then she'll set on that nest. She's eating primarily insects during this time. She'll come out to the feeders for nectar, but primarily she is sitting on that nest and she's burning a lot of calories. So she's eating a lot of protein. And then once those babies hatch, the eggs hatch, she's going to be feeding them primarily protein. So a lot of times in April, you see a lot of activity at your feeder and you're like, oh, they're here. And you remember all that activity that you saw last August. But they come to the feeders and then it's like they disappear. Every now and then you'll see the male, but you haven't seen the female. She's on a nest. Once those babies fledge that first nest, and that usually happens mid-May maybe, then you'll start to see a little bit more activity at the nest or at the feeder. You'll see the juveniles coming and going. You'll still see the male hanging around. And then once she's got that first brood raised and weaned, then they will mate again. And then she does the same thing. She'll use the same nest. She'll lay 2 more eggs and the process starts over again. That batch of babies doesn't start appearing at the feeders until late June or late July, mid to late July. And that's when you start seeing all the activity that you remember from last year. So at the beginning, just be patient. You're going to see them some, the more hummingbird feeders that you put out, the more hummingbirds you'll have, the more traffic that you'll have. But that comes later in the season. For most of us, especially those in the Charlotte area, especially those of us that are in a populated area with other people feeding hummingbirds, chances are you've only got one pair in your yard. And so you'll only see one male and one female until those babies hatch. For those of you who are lucky enough to be out in the country in the middle of 100 acres, you're seeing 30 and 40 hummingbirds at a time because there's nobody else near you feeding. And so they're coming for that nectar, those free, easy calories. They're coming to that feeders in droves, and they're much less likely to be territorial around the food than those of us who live in subdivisions when all of our neighbors are feeding the hummingbirds. They can be very picky and they can be very territorial. On your placement of the feeders, I recommend that you put them, the first thing you should consider is where are you going to enjoy it the most? I love mine putting them on my window. We have those suction cup hooks that attach to the windows, and then just hanging them right there because it brings them right up to the window where you can really enjoy them. Another consideration that you should have about the placement is sunshine. They are, the nectar is going to spoil quicker if it's exposed to the afternoon sun or a lot of sun. If you can protect it from the heat of the afternoon sun, or better yet, put it in an area that gets a lot of shade, hanging it from a tree, for example, that's ideal. So if you've got a tree right outside your window, you can hang your hummingbird feeder from, that's the perfect location. Also, if you're going to do multiple feeders, then you need to, if you don't want one male to be able to dominate all the feeders, you need to spread them out about 20 feet. And that's, maybe you put a couple in the front yard and a couple in the backyard. But if you put them too close together, he will sit in between them up higher, and then he will guard both of them and run off anybody else who tries to come. So that's the ideal placement. I forgot to let me grab one thing to show you that will help you if you don't have a place that you have. These cast a shade. Here's one right here. Right, so this is like a little dome that you hang your feeder underneath, and it'll cast a shade on. It'll also protect it from the rain. So when it rains a lot, the water can get inside of the hummingbird feeder, and it can dilute the mixture. So it's not the right solution. So these help with both sunshine and with rain. So that's just something to consider. But if you can put it right on your window, kind of under the eaves, that's an ideal location. And these are the hooks, has the suction cups that you use. Again, this sticks to your window, and then this just hangs like that. And they'll come right up to the feeder, when it's on the window. There's another one that goes on the window. This is, I don't know if you can see this, it's like a test tube, and it has a little suction cup, and this just suctions right onto the window. And this is all the amount of red that you need, just this little piece to attract hummingbirds. They can see that much red. See how much that is? They can see that much red 3/4 of a mile away. They are focused on red. So that is one reason we say just get a feeder that's got red on it, but don't put any red dye in your solution. It's not necessary as long as your feeder has some red on it, and the red dye is not good for them. Someone is asking, what about squirrels? And squirrels, squirrels will find your hummingbird feeder. And sometimes that means they're just thirsty. So we really recommend making sure that you've got plenty of fresh water available. But squirrels come to your hummingbird feeders for the same reason I drink chocolate milkshakes. It's good, right? It's sugar, it's calories, it's sweet. so it's hard to keep a squirrel off of it once he's found it. But you can put it on a pole, like we recommend with our squirrel proof feeders, put it on a pole and put a baffle on it. And as long as they can't jump from somewhere else, so that should keep them off of the feeders. But again, if you put enough of these out, hopefully the squirrel won't be able to monopolize all of them. We're going to talk about bees too. So the squirrels can certainly ruin a good party, but you know, the sugar water, the nectar just gives that jolt of energy and calories that the hummingbird needs. And unfortunately, it gives other birds, you know, you'll find finch will try to step out of this too for the same reason. It's nice, easy calories. So they're mostly empty calories, but it's calories. So I'm going to go back. Any other questions before I go back over and show you some more of my presentation? We're going to talk about plants, and then we're going to come back to the different types of feeders. So let me show you my script. Oh, Carol, hang on a second. Stop. Sorry, Carol. I moved on. You can ask me a question if you want to.
Okay, I had to quit putting water in the ant. It's not the trap, but whatever the thing that prevents the ants from getting in. Because the finch would get on it, and they messed all over the feeding port. So
Yes, and that happens. No, what I would recommend is, so for finch, and what she's saying is the ant traps, they become a watering station for a lot of the other birds, and they sit on top and they drink, and sometimes they can do what birds do and poop, and when they do that, then that poops right on the hummingbird feeder. So you can use that dome that I was talking about earlier, put the ant trap above the dome, and then hang the hummingbird feeder from the dome. And when they poop, then they would poop on top of that dome. So that would protect your hummingbird feeder. I have not tried putting the ant trap under the dome, and that might work too, because I don't think the finch could get up under there. So that's a great question. I'll have to experiment with that this summer when the hummingbirds come back. But what I would do, Carol, is I would use the dome, but I would put the ant trap above the dome and then hang the hummingbird feeder below the dome.
You're on share
all right.
screen right now.
Yes, I know. I'm gonna show you that when I come back. So let me show you. Let's talk about plants, and then I'll come back to the to that ant trap question. So the native columbine is a great hummingbird plant. It has the little nectar cups in there, the nectar that the hummingbirds like. And what's really nice about the native columbine is the time of year that it blooms. It's one of the first bloomers, and it's right around the time when the hummingbirds show up. Another early bloomer, even though this one's not red, is the Carolina jessamine. This is the state flower of South Carolina. This is a vine. It's an evergreen vine. It grows really easily. And this will also early in the season, mine's starting to bloom right now, but early in the season, it'll feed any early comers that arrive.
What's the matter?
I'm sorry. Okay. These are two of my favorite hummingbird bushes or hummingbird food in the crossvine. Again, they're native. It's crossvine. That's in the upper left. And the buckeye. And the buckeye is a small tree. It's an understory tree. And one of the reasons that these are my favorite is when these guys start blooming, I know that my hummingbirds are really close, because the hummingbirds are the pollinators for these two plants. And so there is a symbiotic relationship, evolutionary history between these plants and the hummingbird. So, you kind of wonder who figured it out first. Did the hummingbirds figure out that they can migrate now because the crossvine is blooming, or did the crossvine start blooming because they knew that their pollinator was here? So again, just kind of one of those interesting things in nature, those relationships that you can understand. A couple of other plants. This is the coral honeysuckle. This is our native honeysuckle, also a vine. It's a tubular shaped flower. Red tubular shape is ideal. this is a really a good plant because it's not an early spring bloomer, but it blooms all summer. So it's giving the bluebirds, I mean the hummingbirds food throughout the summertime. And then another great summertime native plant is the trumpet vine. And trumpet vines, especially here in Charlotte, you can see them growing up the telephone poles in the area. It's not aggressive. It's not like a wisteria where it's going to take over your yard, but it is a fast grower. So keep that in mind if you're going to put it on an arbor. But it's also a summer bloomer. So the cross vine is blooming early in the summer and or in the spring, and then when the cross vine stops blooming, the trumpet vine and the honeysuckle take over. And then when those two kind of start fading, the cross vine will bloom again in the fall, and it'll feed the hummingbird as it is getting ready for its migration and during the migration. So these are just great plants to have in your yard. Here's another couple of great plants. The cardinal lobelia, or the cardinal flower, that's the one on the left side. Again, red tubular shaped flowers. And the one on the right is a cultivar. It's a salvia. It's called black and blue salvia. My sister gave me a cutting from this. I didn't think it would survive up here. She's down in Florida, but it does. And it is a magnet for the hummingbirds. The hummingbirds just love that. Even though it's not red, they love that that black and blue salvia. So it will come back each year. Another couple of good plants to have in your yard. Again, you see the theme here, red tubular shaped flowers. The one on the upper left is a salvia that you can get in Home Depot or Lowe's or any of your garden centers. It's an annual. It's going to die out next winter, but it is going to feed the hummingbirds all summer. And just make sure when you buy them that you're not getting anything treated with any type of pesticide or herbicide, no neonicotinoids. You want really good. You don't have to buy organic, but you don't want anything that's been treated. And the plant that's on the lower right is pineapple sage. And I also, this is not a native, but it is red tubular shaped flower. And one reason that this is a good plant, not only can you use the leaves taste like pineapple, so you can dry them and make tea out of them if you wanted to, but this plant blooms again really late in the season. And I spoke about different species of hummingbirds that have spent the winter here. Taylor Pehoff, our kind of resident expert, he has noticed, and it happened to me, so I can vouch for it, but he's noticed that the people who get those winter hummingbird, like the rufous hummingbird or the black chin hummingbird, usually have pineapple sage growing in their yard. So it's almost like, because it's such a late bloomer, it catches the attention of those winter hummingbirds. And I had a rufous hummingbird in Matthews years ago. We had someone come out and band it. It was an immature male. He spent all winter with us. And at the time, I had pineapple sage growing in my yard. So it was, I can vouch for it. All right, so I'm going to come off of screen sharing for a second, and we're going to talk about the different types of feeders. So let's see, stop sharing my screen, stop. All right, anybody have any questions? I've got 2 in the chat. So let's see. How do you know what plants haven't been treated with pesticides? And that's a good question. Usually, especially in good, respectable garden centers, they will label the plants that have been treated with neonics. In the big box stores, it's probably best that you ask that if this particular plant has been treated with a neonic. If they're honest, they will tell you. There is also a medallion or a sticker that they put in the plants when it's been treated with a neonic, so that you know it. Some people want that because they don't want any insects on it, which is the antithesis of what I'm trying to preach here. You do want insects on your plants. So they should be labeled with a neonic, either that it's not been treated with a neonic or that it has. But I would shop in a good, respectable garden center. And somebody's asking, I'm new to the area. When do the hummingbirds show up? And they are on their way. They come in April. Usually it's right around the 1st of April and end of March. And there's a hummingbird map that you can watch online. It's a migration map, and people go in when they see their first hummingbird. They go online and they say, here's my zip code and I saw a hummingbird today. And so you can, and they put dots on the map, and you can watch them march up the coastline. So that's a lot of fun, just to watch their progress and watch the first one come to Charlotte area. There are also, I learned this year that there's a population of hummingbirds that don't migrate along the coast all the way down North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and parts of Florida. They just stay the winter there. Now that the winters are becoming more mild, they're staying. And we have a friend of the store. He lives on the Outer Banks, and he's had a couple of hummingbirds, all females, all winter stay with him. So, and I say, be careful what you wish for, because when that hummingbird stayed with us that winter, it made me a nervous wreck because I was worried about my feeders freezing, and you'd have to wake up before the first light to take down the feeder that was out there and put out one that was thawed. And, and if you go on vacation, gosh, who's going to do that? Or if you travel. So it was, I felt a lot of pressure around my hummingbird, and that was probably self-imposed. I'm sure he would have done fine without me, but I felt like I was responsible for this bird. So, somebody's put in the chat feature, how to spell neonicotinoids. And also people are putting in some plant recommendations. There's another plant called a hummingbird vine. It's also an annual. It self-seeds pretty easily, but it grows fast. It'll cover like an arbor in a season, but it dies back. So just think like a hummingbird, right? Red, tubular shaped flowers, and pretty much anything with red on it. So now let's talk about feeders. Oh, and Carol, Sorrel, here's what I was telling you about, or trying to explain. So here's the hood, right? If you put the ant trap above this, when the goldfinch are sitting here drinking, this will protect your hummingbird feeder below. So that's just one thing. If you put the ant trap below the hood, it might be low enough. Again, I don't know if you can see that. It might be low enough to keep the goldfinch off of it. So you could try that as well. But why not put out a little dish for the goldfinch to drink out of, and hopefully, because the goldfinch seem to like drinking out of the side of something versus getting in like a bird bath. So put a little dish out there with water in it and see if the goldfinch would use that. I've got somebody else asking me a question about ant trap. All right, that's an excellent question. She's saying someone has already noticed that this has a built-in ant trap. But what I say is that this is too small of an ant trap. So try this, but in July, when it gets really hot, it's going to dry up faster than you can put water in it. So you'll need to keep that refilled all the time, or just put another ant trap with it. Those really dry out quickly. Another reason is because the goldfinch, just like we've been talking, the goldfinch and the house finch will sit here and drink all of it out of there. So there's also really large, this is a much larger ant trap, and it's also clear. So you can tell if the birds have drank all the water out of it, or did it evaporate. So that's just one of the reasons. But let's talk about feeders for a second. There's two basic type of feeders. This is what we call our saucer type feeder. And then this is a gravity fed feeder. And there are a jillion different variations on these, but we prefer the saucer feeder. We also caution when somebody comes in and wants a really pretty hummingbird feeder, we caution against going pretty versus practical, because what happens If you get the really pretty ones, they're harder to clean. And I can speak from experience. I was given one as a gift and I loved it, but I would not clean it as clean it or change the nectar as often because it was such a pain. So I just got smart and I just went practical. It doesn't have any yellow on it. So the yellow is what attracts bees. Bees and butterflies are attracted to the color yellow. So if you're having a lot of trouble with bees at your hummingbird feeder, go with one that doesn't have any yellow on it. And I will say that it is not a guarantee that bees won't eventually find this, but I mean, why put out a flag to attract them, right? Another thing you can do if bees find it, because it's not gravity fed, and gravity is doing the deciding what the level of the water is, you can only fill this just halfway full. And the bees won't be able to get to the nectar. A hummingbird's tongue is twice as long as its beak. I don't know how to do that on the camera. So so the beak is this long, the tongue will go out another length more. So a hummingbird tongue can go all the way to the bottom of this feeder. So if you just fill it up halfway, they'll still be able to drink the nectar. And the nectar, another question is, should it be store-bought or should you make it yourself? And I say just make it yourself. That's the cheapest way to do it. You want to use white cane sugar, not honey, not Splenda or stevia or brown sugar or organic sugar. The brown sugar and the organic sugar or molasses, that darkness is signaling that there's iron present, and that's good for us. It's really bad for hummingbirds. So don't use anything except the white cane sugar. And you want to use 4 to 1, 4 parts water to 1 part sugar. All right. And I've got this in a slide in here too. But 4 parts water, 1 part sugar. The best thing to do, if you can, is bring it to your water to a boil, pour the sugar in, that will get, and then, boil it and then let it cool down. You can make a large batch of it and just keep it in your refrigerator. It'll keep for a couple of weeks in your refrigerator. And then that way, when you need to, bring your feeder in. And I'll talk about how often to do it. Pop the top off. I use white vinegar and water, and I usually take a paper towel. I soak it in white vinegar. I really rub it well all the way around. And what's nice about this feeder is that there's no nooks and crannies, right? There's nowhere for you to have to really struggle with a brush. The only place you need to get a brush involved are these little tiny holes right here. And you can get like a Q-tip or a pipe cleaner or a little brush. We sell little brushes. It'll go right in those holes because you want to make sure you get all the molds out. And then I also do the underside with white vinegar, and then I rinse it really well, fill it up with fresh nectar, and put it right back out. So it's really a quick process to do. I don't recommend you put these in your dishwasher because it can warp them, and it also it fades the red. But I mean, you could, but I mean, it's so easy to do with the white vinegar and a paper towel. It's so easy to do. I don't know why you would want to. So that is, and then put it right back out. In this time of year when it's still cool outside, and especially if you've got it in the shade, you would only have to change the nectar about once a week. In the heat of the summer, in July and August, when it is just wicked hot, especially if it's in the sunshine, you may have to do it every day or every other day. So that's why you really want something that's easy to clean, and you also want to make a nice big batch of it and keep it in your refrigerator. Putting it out cold is not going to hurt the hummingbirds. Putting it out too hot might, so I wouldn't do that. But you want to keep it fresh because spoiled nectar is not good for them. So I had another question here. Let's go back over. Oh, somebody says they love it when the chickadees drink from the ant trap. Is there anything we can do besides planting to help with providing protein? Are the mealworms just for the bluebirds? So hummingbirds will not eat the mealworms, but everybody else will eat the mealworms. Chickadees, you'll find the cardinals will come to mealworms, wrens especially. So everybody except for the hummingbirds. I think probably a little bit too big for them, maybe, but anyway, yes. So what you want, Frank, to answer your question, the best thing to do is to plant plants that will feed the protein. Also, don't use any chemicals in your yard, or if you're using any chemicals, just be very surgical about your use of any chemicals in the yard, so that you can you don't poison everything else in the yard. You know, these companies who do the mosquito spraying and the treatments for mosquitoes, and they say it doesn't kill everything else, they are wrong. It's killing any soft-bodied insect like that. So with mosquitoes, the one thing, you don't have a problem with mosquitoes in your hummingbird feeder. If you've got water in your yard, you may have an issue with mosquitoes. And so with bird baths especially, we say change the water every other day, or at least every third day, because it takes 72 hours from the time that the mosquito lays its egg in the water. It's 72 hours from that point before it emerges, the larva emerges as a mosquito. So if you dump the water out, it'll stop that cycle. So that's how you, and also mosquitoes are a hummingbird protein source. So, but I don't recommend raising mosquitoes. Nobody wants more mosquitoes. So, the gravity fed, let's go back to the gravity fed feeders for a second. The gravity fed feeders, this one, our grandmothers were using this one, and they've made it a little bit easier. This is the glass bottle, you can put it in the dishwasher, but you should still go in with a brush, especially if it's molding, because the dishwasher won't get all the mold out. And the bottom opens up so that you can clean it a little bit easier. There are some nooks and crannies in there that you're going to have to get a little brush around, but at least this one is a little bit better. The more smooth you can get, the better, so that it's not harboring any mold or mildew in any cracks or crevices. Let's see if I have any other questions here before I go back to do they eat cankerworms? No, I think too big for cankerworms. When should you put out the feeder? So let's go back to that for a second. So they're coming April 1st, exciting time for all of us. The first ones that come through may not stay, because, you got to think about it. We're only in North Carolina, and they breed all up and down the eastern seaboard. So they're going all the way up into Canada. So those first ones that we see might just be passing through the area. So go ahead and put your feeders out. You want to feed them as they head north. And then the reverse happens in the late summer. So remember, I told you that she has 2 broods. After he mates that second time, his job here is done, right? So he doesn't stick around to raise those babies. So he might actually start heading south, so that he can, because he set up his territory here, and they overwinter in Central and South America. So now he's got to go back down there and set his territory up for the winter time. So he may start drifting south. So a lot of that activity that we see late July and August are those birds that are coming from up north, and they're trickling through this area. So, you want to keep your feeders out. I recommend you keep them up until Thanksgiving. I had my last hummingbird one year was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So I keep mine up until Thanksgiving. Also, by keeping it up till Thanksgiving, if you're going to get one of those winter hummingbirds, they're usually here by the end of November, 1st of December. So that'll tell you if you've got one in the area. So keep them up that long. But anyway, so go ahead and put your feeders out. You can put it out I don't put mine out until April 1st. Usually, I think the earliest I've ever seen one was like April the 4th. So, but if you want to, and then also check that hummingbird map. And as they're coming up the seaboard, you might be able to be the first one in Charlotte to see a hummingbird. So, so somebody asked about threat. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again, because I did address that. All right. Hang on 1 second. Oh, and here's the information about the nectar. So you want 4 parts of water, 1 part white cane sugar, make a large, excuse me, make a large batch and keep it in the refrigerator, and don't put any red dye. All right, some of the major threats to hummingbirds. All right, so just like all other baby birds, I mean, they must be delicious. Everybody's trying to eat them, but so I mean, snakes will hang around a hummingbird feeder. Cats will get them. It's, you know, there's the same that other birds, same threats that other birds face are also threats for hummingbirds. But a couple in particular is the praying mantis. So a praying mantis, which is a very beneficial insect, and there, although there are some Chinese praying mantis here, they're native to the area. The Carolina mantis. So so you don't want to kill them, but if you see a praying mantis hanging around your hummingbird feeder, you might want to go out there and remove him, take him off and put him someplace else, because praying mantis, and if you want to see pictures of it, Google praying mantis and hummingbirds. I didn't want to gross everybody out with it, but praying mantis will catch and kill a hummingbird at the feeder. Also, Jan here, the manager here at Birdhouse, she had a black snake that hung out at her hummingbird feeder all one summer. So she just stopped filling up that feeder so that the hummingbirds would stop coming to it. Another man-made threat is that lower left-hand picture, and that is the emergency handle in your garage. We do a PSA on this every year in our newsletter. Please put some duct tape around that handle, or cover it up with a Harris Teeter grocery bag or something. But because what happens, especially with those juveniles, that red handle is hanging down in the middle of your garage, and the hummingbird, because it looks a lot like a feeder, right? It's red, so the hummingbird will go into the garage, and then when he discovers that it's not a feeder, a lot of times they'll fly straight up. And when they do that, then they hit the ceiling and then they can't get out. And the more stressed they are, the more they try to fly up. That's a panic response. If they feel threatened, they fly directly up. And of course, the more stressed they are, the more likely they are to injure themselves or not survive at all. And having some crazy person with a broom running around the garage chasing them is very stressful. So what we recommend is don't do anything. So number one, the first thing you do is you get rid of that red handle. But if you've got one in your garage, don't chase it around with a rake or a broom or anything. Just wait it out. Open up, if the garage door wasn't completely open it up, hang a feeder at the opening, and then just wait, because a hummingbbird's got to eat about every 10 minutes or they run out of steam and they go into a condition called torpidity, which it's like being in a coma almost, or suspended animation. So if they don't eat for in about 10 minutes, they will, what we call helicopter down to the floor. They fall and they're turning spirals, like the maple tree blooms, how they kind of spiral down. That's what the hummingbird will do. They helicopter down, and then you can gently pick it up and take a minute and enjoy the experience. How they weigh about like 3 paper clips. I mean, they're really incredibly light. And then walk out of the garage with it. You can grab that feeder if you want to. Show it the feeder. Sometimes they will drink right then, but most times once you wake it up, it will take off. And then just make sure that there is nectar nearby. But please don't chase it around the garage with a broom, because it's just stressing it out. If you can wait 50, or if one gets in your house, and this has happened as well. We get lots of calls from this. Don't just wait it out. It's not going to take long, 10 minutes or so. But the best thing to do is to stop it from happening in the first place, and that is to cover up that red handle in the garage. The biggest threat to hummingbirds is very ironic. It's spider webs. And the reason I say that it's ironic is that a hummingbird nest is held together with spider webs. So a lot of times they will, as they are, as she's out there gathering nesting materials for her nest, in the form of spider webs, she will get so entangled that she can't get out. And again, if you want to investigate this, Google hummingbird in spider webs. So I had a neighbor that found one covered in spider webs. It was still alive, and we were able to, using a Q-tip, get the spider webs off of the hummingbird. So she was saved, but ironically, like I say, getting caught in spider webs, and a spider, especially the larger, spiders, they will eat the hummingbird. So that's those are the biggest threats. And like I say, the praying mantis and the black snakes, those are natural predators, and it's hard to watch, and I would try to protect the hummingbird as much as possible, but also realize that that is a natural threat. The red handle in your garage is not. That's a man-made threat. And I think a couple of other, this is some more nectar producing flowers, the Carolina phlox and the purple coneflower. There's that lobelia, the button bush. I think that's more for butterflies than it would be for hummingbirds. And the last thing that I would talk about is water. Everything needs water, and this is a mister. This is one of my favorite watering sources for the birds. You put it up in a tree. There's a hummingbird right there. Hummingbirds aren't able to use a deep bird bath. They might sit on the side and sip, but they love misters or sprinkler systems, or if you can put a sprinkler that would spray a mist over a small bush, the hummingbirds and other birds too would love it. But this mister, it's a tube, you run it up the tree, it attaches to your hose bib, and it just sprays out this fine mist. And the birds do what is called leaf bathing. So they're rubbing themselves on the leaves and the limbs. Oh, there's a squirrel. Rubbing themselves on the leaves and the limbs in order to get wet and clean their feathers, and also for hydration. So I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to go back over to Zoom. Hopefully everybody's still with me and still awake. So, and I've got a couple of more chats. Let's see here. Some of the predators, can it be near a fence? Yeah, if you're near a fence, again, cats or snakes would be the first thing. Somebody said one was stuck in the skylight on their patio. It was very scary, but we did save it. Yeah. And again, if you will just wait out, if a hummingbird gets trapped in your house, your garage, your porch, just wait them out. They won't last more than 10 minutes. And then once they go into that torpidity, just carefully pick them up and take them outside and turn them loose. So, any other questions that I can answer for anybody that I didn't already cover? We talked about food. Protein is the most important, not using chemicals, making sure you've got fresh nectar out, food, water, that mister is ideal. Sprinklers are ideal. They love water movement. So if a small bubbling fountain would be nice too. But it has to be, for hummingbirds, it needs to be really shallow or very misty. And then I wish there was something that we could do. I wish there was a birdhouse that I could sell that hummingbirds would use, but alas, there is not one. They do their own. And I've only found a hummingbird nest. I've seen ones that other people have found, and they've cut them out of the tree. But I only found one time. It was not active. It was in the wintertime after all the leaves had fallen off the tree, and it was built in like the crotch of some small branches, and she had built right in the middle. It was just the cutest little thing ever. So, but anyway, any questions? All right. So we get excited for our hummingbirds. I hope that everybody learned something. If there, I'm going to be at Wildology all day tomorrow. So if there's something you think of tonight that you wish you had asked, please call me over there at that store. We'll be happy. And of course, staff, everybody here knows everything I know. So please feel free to ask any questions of staff that you want to. So thank you for joining us. That was only an hour. That's pretty good. Thank you.
You
Thank
did
you.
good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Enjoy-
you.
Enjoy your birds. Enjoy the sunshine today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for joining
Yeah.
us. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Mama.
Bye, darling. See you someday.
All right.
Someday.
We live in different
Soon.
cities.
Right. Thank
Soon.
you so much for the nice
Thank you
comments.
so much. I had a wonderful time. You did a great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
so much. That's
My
nice.
lovely daughter signed me up, and so I'm going to thank her and tell her you did such a great job and sign me up for more.
All right. Excellent. And I'm going to put the recording of this on our website. So, and on our Facebook page. So, you can share it with all your friends. So thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, you
Bye.
did a great job. Really
Thank you.
great.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.